Well, we're back and we're still on the X-Ray. Now I wanted to show you a little bit about what's going on here. This is that same piece. So it was 4.5 inches. I took 2 1/4 and I stepped it down, and it's not a sharp step, which is fine. But 2 1/4 roughly of that 1/4 by 1 by 4.5, 2 1/4, 50% come out. And let's measure. I got my tape or my measuring device right here. So we are right at 8 inches. So we've got it wider, going to narrow. We've got it thicker, going to narrow. So I put my target size here more or less, and then made 4 straight lines, corners, as it were. 4 straight corners. That can only leave you, if that's smaller than that, that leaves you a taper. So I left a little bit out here on the end, and we're going to flatten it. I call that the beaver tail. And you cannot just go all the way to an end taper and expect to get material without upsetting or something like that for the beaver tail. You have to allow the material. So let's get that hot. And I'm going to emphasize that even though it's a small piece, and yeah, there's always a danger of burning it up, but you got to have control of it, of the heat. And this is one good thing about a blower that's manual. It will stop or slow down and stop eventually on its own without having to remember to turn an electric switch off or something like that. Now, I'm not advocating this. If you don't, if you want the other, that's fine. But it's on you. You got to remember. So it's not that I have a bad memory so much. It's just that I'm used to this way, and it has its good points. So I want this beaver tail to be yellow hot. I'm going to be coming to the anvil. So I got to come quick because it's small. So my goal is to have this from this viewpoint for it to taper all the way, and then just carry through the beaver tail. Without that extra material, you wouldn't get the width you need. You just wouldn't get it. So that's important. So let's go. I'm going to heat this area here now. This is the second part that often confuses folks, how to start this area. So I'm going to be juggling around here using different tools, and I'm using a traditional anvil, and I've got a hold fast that I made to hold this, and I've got a little bar that I made. And it's going to allow me to perform this next step. And again, my fire is pretty small, and I don't want to heat the entire piece. It's not necessary. It'll be hot, but it won't be as hot as that area that I'm working on. This is a hold fast, and so I kind of have to move things around to where I need it. This will hold pretty good when you jam it in there, and that's how you loosen it. So I'm going to be, I'll come to this, and the first step is going to be over here at the vise. Now I got to get everything, all my ducks in a row, I call it. I get my ducks in a row, get my tools where I need them. And one of the points of the video and showing you how to do this, and my whole idea of making a knife here in a primitive setting, is that I can use a simple materials, this is just a scrap piece of round stock. But I forged a smaller section here. Actually, I think this was square. I rounded it and then rounded it smaller here. and this is incidental. It's just, and that's just to hang it. So it's not anything that, this tool is not anything you want to emulate, except just find you a piece of scrap, say 1/2 inch, and then 3/8. Once you go to those smaller sizes, remember me cutting that piece off and showing you how it just ratio scales it down, then you'll want a smaller one of these. Perhaps this will be your big size, and then another size for the smaller part. And you'll see what I'm doing here in just a minute. But again, I still got that small one here, and I'll make reference to that whenever I have to comment on the tools. So let's kind of get ready. I've got my vise the way I want it, my hammer, and my tool. In my videos, I think you're going to find there's going to be some weighting, maybe some toe tapping, so you can kind of get used to that. That's the way it is here in the shop. It's the way I have to work. I have to be patient with the piece, and anyone watching, I hope you're patient with me. All right. So let's take note of how I put it in the vise. Okay, put it in the vise. It's slanting, leaning back. And I'm only going down, if it slips in the vise, I can only go down so far, because if I go any farther, I'll be messing up some work that I want to preserve. Okay, I'm starting to get what I call a dog leg. Now, that's where the vise was slipping. And it started pushing that way, but it's pushing a curve under the tail. Now we're going to push one here. We're isolating that part where the rivet's going to be. Okay, so let's go back and get it hot. And at this point, the tail is out of the fire, and it's already shaped and long, and I've even chamfered the corners so that it's easy on the hand. So I don't want to needlessly heat it and overheat it too many times. There's no point in that. Now this will go over here. And as much as possible, you work as hot as it'll tolerate without doing any damage. You don't want to do any damage, but at the same time, you work as hot as the piece will reasonably tolerate. Let's just see. I may have my ducks are not quite in the row that I wanted them to be in. That's okay. So let's. Can you see kind of how that's isolating that part? And as it gets looser, because it's straightening that dog leg back out from this direction, it lifts the tail. But all this is pushing. Let's look at it from this way, Ben, right here. It's pushing these little cheeks or curls out thicker and wider. Well, all that material I'm gonna try to bring out and draw it into and out that standoff. I call that a standoff because it's standing away. It will be now standing away and holding the rivet out and off of the main piece. And where do I get some of these terms? I make them up, because this is a totally different design than what maybe you've ever seen. you've probably seen it, but some of these terms are only for the making of it. So I'm gonna get it hot and do a little bit of work on it. And any of these little burrs like that right there, I can file those away, but I want to do it fairly soon. So I think what I'm gonna do is just do that now. And when I say filing, I will interchange that with a grinder. I keep a side grinder handy, so let's just make some noise. That doesn't take but a second to do. I'm not really removing hardly anything, only that burr. I want to make sure, and I'm not getting into the other part that I pointed out. I only took it off where the burr was, here and here. I didn't take any of this off. I'm going to use that material, so let's get that hot. Again, I'm holding it now more or less by the rat tail. And at some point, I have a bunch of different sets of tongs over here. And at some point I'll change because it just gives me a more secure hold. So I'm gonna set that over and just kind of out of the way for the moment. We started with 1/4 inch stock, 1/4 inch thick. Keep in mind that that is probably, it's, for me it's too thick for a knife blade. So I'm not expecting to just put a point on this and grind it and it's be a 1/4 inch thick at the spine. I'd prefer not to have something like that. I want a thinner blade, 1/8, maybe 1/8 inch thick. So if you've got a 1 inch by 1/4 and you draw it out longer, put a point on it and thin it, can you imagine? And we started with like 2 1/4, but we're eating some of it up with the ricasso and the standoff. Let's just say you got 1 5/8 to 1 3/4 usable material of that size for the blade. It's going to double in length at the very least. So 1 5/8, 1 3/4 doubled, you know, you're up into 3 5/8 to, you can get 4 1/4 out of it easily. So proportion wise, that brings me back to another point I want to make. Proportion wise, it works well, 50-50. Now when I went back to this size and I still use 50-50, the tail is naturally going to be shorter than this one, this bigger one that I'm working on in fire. That tail is 8 inches. On this one here, if you get 6 inches, you're probably lucky. That's not a good term because it works. So if you can forge, you can get 5.5 to 6 inches and you're fine. And that'll make a short, like a 3-finger handle for your little blade. And the whole thing combined might be 5 inches long. That's really small. It's really great for just a personal carry, a neck knife, a lady's purse, things like that. So just keep in mind that this is all scaled down. All these measurements I'm giving you scale down as they come down to this smaller size. Kind of important to know that. So again, I'm working at a high heat, high as it'll tolerate. And it's certainly not doing any damage because, I mean, we're not talking about sparkling or anything like that. We're just talking about a reasonably high heat. Now notice the position that I have this on the animal. I'm going to tap right here for a couple hammer licks. The position goes with the knife, the design of the knife. So I'm working on ricasso and blade. Handle is thicker. keep that in mind. The handle is slightly thicker, so I can change this a little bit right here. Got just a little bit of a wrinkle showing right here and right there. Some of that will go away, some of it may not. But you see it, I'll go back and redo this with the vise, and then redo this using my hold fast in that little bar I've got made. The little one here, the big one here. And that will continue to not only push in, but this will pull out. So we're doing two things. We're pushing this in, and pulling that out. And only when we get all that accomplished will the blade start getting to its target thickness right here. That's your target thickness for the blade, and then it carries on out. I don't want it to ramp from the handle to the tip. It's got to have a step right there, and that step needs to be on an angle. It doesn't need to be square. It works better on an angle. It's a stronger transition. So that's my opinion, and I just felt like you need to know that. So let's end this video, and then we'll start back again here on the next one. See you on the next one.